computer off. Yeah, sure. I'm gonna have to get the dogs their medicine. Oh, I think I kicked you. Sorry about that. I'm gonna move this until we start. How do I do that? Will any version do if I can't manage to get that one in time?
I'm trying to listen to the shit too.
Let's see what other versions you find.
Okay. When you get done eating, so I can eat.
I'm gonna kind of mute everybody here for a minute. Okay. Doug, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. And starting everybody off muted. Doug, it is nice to see you and put a real live face to that.
Nice to see you as well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, thank you so much for being here. So we're going to go ahead and kick this off. Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm one of the founders of White Support for the Black Cause, along with Mr. Riddick over there, who we see there. Now we see. And so this class is a class I took with the National Lawyers Guild. Somebody's really loud. There we go. All right. So this is a class I took with the National Lawyers Guild, and really kind of blew me away on what I didn't know. And I was very heavily involved with protests in California, and this information would have come in really, really handy. And I think it's extremely important to get this information out to as many people as possible. So today, how this is going to work out is pretty much I'm going to keep everybody except Riddick and Doug muted. We'll kind of go over some of the talking points. And then when you have a question, just pop in the chat that you have a question, and I will unmute you and we'll have that discussion on whatever your question is. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. All right. So first, I want to have Doug. I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, my name's Doug Jackson. I'm an attorney in St. Petersburg, Florida. I have my own practice. It's called the Law Firm of Douglas G. Jackson. You so kindly invited me to come and join the presentation. So thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful. And Riddick, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little background as well, please?
I'm you. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
All right. My name is Riddick. I live in New York City. Former police officer here, and I just got back from a Black Lives Matter movement, and it was crazy. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Crazy. Okay, well, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we will.
So I don't know if any of you noticed in the invite, there was a download from the National Lawyers Guild. I don't know if any of you looked at that, but know your rights. And you have the right to remain silent. Whether you've downloaded it or read it or not, make sure you do have that, get really, really familiar with it. It's going to give some details of things that we're not going to go over today. If there is anybody here who has immigration issues in relations to being an activist, and this has a little bit of detail in there. I don't know if we have any immigrants here in the group. If you do, just kind of put a hey there in the chat, and we can briefly go over that if you'd like. But today we're really focusing on how to assert your rights, making sure you know what they are and how to assert them. Now, as I stated in the invite, this is not going to stop police brutality, okay? Not going to do that. If you have a cop who wants to be brutal, he's just going to be brutal, and there's nothing you can do about that. What it can do is prevent erroneous charges, like resisting arrest. Those seem to be a huge trend in the brutality that we see, is they're claiming that that person is resisting arrest. So before we kick off, Doug, Riddick, is there anything you want to add to this before I start going over the points?
No, I have nothing to add. I'm happy to hear what you have to say, and if anything comes up, happy to add my input at that point, and any questions, happy to answer those as well.
Same here, because basically you already nailed everything about what you're about to do. So I'm ready to get into it.
All right. So I am going to read just one brief thing from the printout. And what rights do you have? Whether or not you're a citizen, you have the rights under the United States Constitution. The Fifth Amendment gives every person the right to remain silent, not to answer questions asked by a police officer or a government agent. The Fourth Amendment restricts the government's power to enter and search your home or workplace, although there are many exceptions and new laws that have expanded the government's power. Can put you there for a minute. All right, that have expanded the government's power to conduct surveillance. The First Amendment protects your right to speak freely and to advocate for social change. However, if you are a non-citizen, the Department of Homeland Security may target you based on your political activities. Definitely take note of that, because that applies even when you're not an immigrant. I have definitely bear witness to local BLM chapters being targets by FBI and police, and we've also seen throughout history Malcolm X and Dr. King also being targets of those same agencies for being activists. So the very first thing that they presented in class was, one thing you really have to understand, there is no oath by an officer to protect or to serve you or anybody in the community. Really understand that. They are under no legal obligation to protect and serve you, to help you. There could be a child bleeding on the side of the road. They are not legally obligated to help them. Okay, they're there to enforce law. So we really have to get that out of our mind. There's still this thing of this rage of why are we not being protected and served because that's their job. It's not. Riddick, would you like to step in on that for a moment? Where'd you go? You got to unmute.
Okay. Got it. Okay, you're absolutely right. But the First Amendment, what we could do is like they tell you, you have the right to say whatever you want, speak your mind. However, if you curse at them or even say damn, they could look at that as being menacing, and they could do those, we call those trumped up charges. We could take those charges and we could run with them easily. So the key thing when you're dealing with the police, yes, officer, if you don't want to give them your identification, I wouldn't do it. But unless they have what they call.
We're gonna break that down. Hold on.
Okay. All right, I'm going too fast. My bad.
We're going to break that down. But really just wanted to get on to the point as you were not obligated to protect and serve, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So really pay attention to that.
My bad.
They're not there to protect and serve you. Okay. So the very first thing that you really want to hold in your brain, if you take nothing else away, is your right to remain silent. There is a misconception that we have because we have all these cop shows, these, like Law and Order, things like that, that they're going to read you your Miranda rights. It doesn't work that way. You're lucky if you're going to get your Miranda rights, like once you're processed, once you're at the police station, once there's going to be an arrest, that's when a Miranda rights is probably going to be read to you at some point if you're getting questioned by an officer. So prior to any of that happening, let's just go ahead and start with being pulled over. If you are the driver, you are legally obligated to give them your license, and in some states, your registration and insurance. Okay. However, if they ask you any questions, don't answer. Your response should be, I don't answer questions. I don't care if it is, where are you coming from? Where are you going to? What you doing tonight? The only thing you should ever respond to a police officer is I don't answer questions, or I don't answer questions without my lawyer. This was beat into us in the class like every 5 minutes. I don't answer questions. I don't answer questions without my lawyer. And this is going to happen throughout any process, through detainment. If you do get arrested and taken to the police station, you only answer 2 questions: your name and your date of birth. All right, that's it. You don't give them an address. You don't give them a social security number. You do not give them any health history. If they ask any of those questions, again, you always want to assert your right to remain silent, because everything can be used against you and they'll find a way to do it. Police officers are not your friends. When you start asserting your rights, they tend to get pretty angry. And they will use intimidation to get you to answer questions. If you want to protect yourself, continue to answer with, I do not answer questions without my lawyer present. At that, let's take a pause there for a minute. Douglas, do you have anything you want to add just on that note there?
I suppose I can add a couple things. One is that you kind of talked about the breakdown of whether they can, when they have to give you the Miranda rights, and of course there's when legally they have to give you the Miranda rights versus when they potentially do. And I will say most police officers, in my experience, I get these cases from the back end. I don't see the arrests. Once they're arrested and they're charged, that's when a lawyer usually comes into the picture. So it's usually not during the actual arrest that I get to see this. So my experience is based on what I've been told. I will say mostly police, once you're under arrest, are pretty good at giving Miranda rights. However, up until that point that you're under arrest, when you're a suspect, they have no obligation, nor should they really, from a police perspective, give Miranda rights. So anything you say at that point can be used against you. If they don't give you the Miranda rights, there may be an ability to exclude anything that you say that's incriminating once you're under arrest, but not before that point. The other thing is the right to remain silent is very strong. The problem with the right to remain silent is if you're silent and then if you say, I invoke my Fifth Amendment right, or I invoke my right to remain silent, but you later speak, you have now waived that right. The right to counsel is actually stronger. So I would say, and this is a little bit tough because if you're not under arrest, it's not as strong. Once you're under arrest, as soon as you say, I want an attorney, I want counsel, and it has to be very specific. It can't be, I think I might want. The courts have held that that is not going to protect you. But if you say, I want counsel, they have to cease all questioning at that point. Even before that, I think it does potentially help depending on how you want to answer these questions. As you were saying, in a stop, it can become a little bit tumultuous depending on the circumstances. But if you were to say, I don't answer any questions, of course, the police officer is going to look at you suspiciously. No matter what you say, the police officer is going to look at you probably suspiciously if you're not answering any questions. If you say, I've been advised by attorneys not to answer any questions without counsel present, they're still not going to like that, but that makes a little bit more sense and it carries a little bit more weight potentially.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you. And when our instructor had even done a demo, which we can't really do here, where he pretended to be the police officer and the citizen invoking their right to remain silent and yelling and getting up in their face. And I'm sure that we have all have at least, the very least, seen videos of instances where police are really the ones getting very belligerent into citizens' faces, trying to force to get information of what they want. So still invoke that lawyer, invoke your right to remain silent. That's your one consistent, or your lawyer can really help you if you stay there, stay in that right. So
I'd like to add one more thing before we move on. I apologize.
No, please. That's why you're here.
But one of the things that a police officer is going to do is they're going to look for probable cause to make an arrest. And so even before they've arrested you, they're looking for as much evidence against you as they can. So if they pull you over, let's say on suspicion of DUI, or they pull you over for any reason, and it's, let's say, after midnight, and most police officers will expect intoxication after midnight, they're going to start asking you to do things. Maybe step out of the car, field sobriety test, things like that. You're not required to do any of those things. So
we're going to get to that. Yeah,
okay.
We're going to get to yeah.
But a lot of times the police officers are looking to make an arrest, and if they're going to arrest you, they're probably going to do it anyway. I was joking around with a police officer one time. We were kind of friendly, but he said something that struck me. He said, he's like, oh, I'm a police officer. And I said, well, I'm not afraid of you. I'm an attorney. And he said, well, you might be able to beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. So that's something that may happen. You may get arrested even if you've done nothing wrong. But if you are silent during this point, they don't have evidence against you.
Exactly. Yes, perfect. Okay, Sean, hold on one moment and I'll unmute you. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, Sean.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Did I just hear you correctly? You said if a police officer try to do a field sobriety test, I have the legal right to refuse that?
Absolutely. In fact, you want to.
Yeah, but isn't on the license itself is for me to me having a valid driver license? Isn't that legal? I'm supposed to cooperate with the police officer who try and give me a field sobriety test?
Okay, here's what you have to do, which is what we're just about to get into right now. So let's say you get pulled over. What you need to do is always physically do what the officer instructs you to do. So if they're asking you to get out of the vehicle, first thing that you want to say before you get out of the vehicle is, am I being detained? Okay, they have to answer that question. They have to say yes or no. They are not obliged to tell you why, but they do have to tell you if you are being detained. All right, so if you're being detained, you need to exit that vehicle and do with your body whatever the police officers say. So if they're giving you a sobriety test, you still have to physically do what they're telling you. So if you have to sit on the curb, if you have to put your hands on the vehicle, and always respond just, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir, okay, You're moving your body in whichever manner they instruct. But if they're about to give you a breathalyzer test, do not consent. Don't consent. Riddick,
So
Doug,
by me having a valid driver's license, that does not make me obligated to consent to a breathalyzer.
May I jump in here real quick?
please.
So it depends. And I will give my disclaimer now. I have to, because I'm an attorney, so you guys know we like to give lots of disclaimers. What is discussed here is not legal advice. This is general legal information. It's not specific to any case. I will say I'm licensed in Florida. In Florida, our driver's license do state that you have to submit to a breathalyzer. Now, if you don't submit to a breathalyzer, that's okay once in Florida. Now, you can get your driver's license suspended based upon that alone. If you submit to a breathalyzer, it could make a criminal case against you. If you refuse to submit to a breathalyzer twice, that can be a misdemeanor potentially. So you may have to submit to a breathalyzer. It doesn't necessarily have to be the portable breathalyzers that are on the road, that some cops carry with them that have calibration errors. It might have to be the one at the station. Now, in terms of doing what they tell you to do physically, you generally, in Florida, and in my knowledge, no state, you actually have to do a physical sobriety test. Now, if you're under arrest, you have to comply with them, but if they tell you to walk a straight line, you can refuse that test. At that point, you're not under arrest. And so it's also a good question to ask, am I under arrest? Because detention is technically different than arrest. Now, detained have to maybe move where they tell you to move, get out of the way. If they tell you to get out of the car, you can ask, am I being detained? That's a good question. Or am I under arrest? And they have to tell you that. But in terms of doing the field sobriety test, the walk a line, say the alphabet, the finger on the nose, at that point, you're not under arrest. They are doing that to get probable cause to arrest you. That's the whole point, is because you're going to mess that up. Those tests are designed for people to fail.
Perfect. So when you are having these interactions with police officers, no matter what the reason is that they claim to have pulled you over and detain you, make sure you gather information about that police officer, gather the name of any officers around, what department, of course, their numbers, write down your location, your time, and of course, get in contact or write down names and numbers of witnesses around during this. You always want to be calm and cool, because we can see how easy it is to ignite brutality. You know, it takes the smallest little thing that we ignite brutality from police officers nowadays. One of the things that we really want to touch on is the Terry Pat, okay? And that's basically the legal search that they can perform on you while they're detaining you or preparing you for arrest, okay? The Terry Pat literally is what it should be, is patting down your body, patting down your legs. They can pat your pockets. As soon as they start going into a hat, into a sock, into a pocket, is when you need to start saying, I do not consent to a search. This will not stop them, okay? However, as they are continuing to search you, you have to continuously say, for example, please take your fingers out of my pockets. I do not consent to this search. Please take your hands out of my hat. I do not consent to this search. Please take your fingers out of my socks or my shoes. I do not consent to this search. Therefore, this can give lawyers the ability to defend you if for some chance you have something illegal. They can ask you, like, what is that in your pocket? You say, it is not a weapon. Do not tell them what's in your pocket. You just reaffirm it's not a weapon and I do not consent to this search. Doug, anything at this point right here? Or Riddick?
Not really. I mean, my general advice is that anytime you are able to, and not in a way that's fast moving or could be construed as a scary manner, to try to film what's happening, or if you're with someone else, have them film what's happening as well. the body cams are a big thing that's going on right now, that more police are trying to use them, and more police stations are trying to use them. But not everyone does. They can be turned off. My understanding is that there is some kind of litigation out there that you may not be able to record with audio in all states, they've tried to charge people for wiretapping if they don't consent. So you might want to tell the police officer, look, I am recording this. And then anything they do is at least a better argument for consent. In most states, my understanding is that you can still record with both video and audio.
There are 28 states currently that you have to look up online that require everybody's permission, including the public servant. I saw Amy's hand up first, and then Canova will get to you. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, I have a concealed carry permit. I'm Jim, by the way, not
Hi, Jim.
Mr. Amy. I have a concealed carry permit, so if I get stopped and taken out of the car, I have a pistol on my hip. You know, how do I handle that?
You are obligated to tell the officer before even getting out of the vehicle.
Okay, so when he says something about getting out of the vehicle is when I say something, otherwise should I mention it if he doesn't take me out of the vehicle?
Ask if you're being detained
Okay,
first, or even stepping out of the vehicle. Because if they answer no, then you want to say, am I free to go?
okay,
All right. So if you're being detained and you're getting ready to leave the vehicle, you need to let them know that you have a concealed permit and that you have a weapon on you.
okay. Well, okay, good. Thank you.
Definitely. Okay. All right. Where was I here?
Can I jump in real quick?
Wait, what was that? Yeah, Riddick, go right ahead real quick.
Listen, also check your states, because every state have different laws. Like in New York City with the license, we don't have what I think somebody just stated in Florida, that you have to consent to a breathalyzer. Wow, I didn't know that. That's something new. I never knew that.
Yeah, every state is different with
Yeah.
little things. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, we're just trying to go over kind of generals. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. Okay, Canova?
I
Question
just
level.
wanted to ask, can you hear me? I got a headphone.
There we go.
Okay. No, I just wanted to ask the whole thing about the Terry please. Never mind. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hear me now? Okay. I just wanted to ask about the Terry Pat. Basically, that means surface.
Surface.
Okay. That's all.
Not going into pockets. They can't go in your shirt. They can't go in your hat. I mean, so what happens? Let me go a little bit more in detail now. If you do not continue to assert your right that you do not consent. So let's say I do not consent to this search and they're patting you down, but as soon as they go in your pocket and you are not verbally saying, please take your fingers out of my pocket, I do not consent. As soon as you stop asserting these rights, you have given them up again. So as soon as you start talking, you have given up your right to remain silent. So basically anything you've said at that point can be used against you. They're already assuming that you've waived that right to be silent. So as soon as you stop asserting your right to just say, I do not consent to the search, you're giving up that right.
And just so everybody's clear, the Terry Pat is also commonly referred to as stop and frisk. So if you hear stop and frisk, that's the Terry Pat. That's the same thing.
Now, if you are being detained, they can legally search your vehicle or near your person within what they call the eagle span. Okay? So basically, wherever you can physically reach as the driver, okay? Or if you were not inside a vehicle, they can search the surrounding area, your wingspan. Some states are going to vary about how far they can look around, but you know, so you want to check your states for that and just how far they can do the search through the Terry Pat. Yes, Amy. You got to unmute yourself.
Okay, so if I'm being detained, that brings me to the question, what are they allowed to detain me for? Can any cop anytime basically say, I want to detain this person because I don't like them, so I'm going to detain them. And then that gives them the right to start searching to find something to arrest me for. Are they allowed to detain me for basically existing?
So their probable cause, what you really have to understand, and Riddick, we're going to let you go deeper on that.
All right. Yeah.
But just a moment. Probable cause, literally, you probably did something. Okay, Riddick, go ahead.
All right. I'm gonna tell you right now, this is like an underlying trick that a lot of cops play. I know the NYPD does it because I was trained that. Even if you sit up there and you say, well, what's the probable cause? We can make up anything. Oh, you cursed at us. You said, damn. We could look at that as a threatening gesture, and then we could look at that as being somewhat called menacing. Believe it or not, we could lock you up for that. We could hold you, and that's how we sit up there and we stick more charges on you by coming up with some bogus charges like that. That's all I need. It goes deep.
And again, we're going to reinsert here that you don't answer questions without a lawyer present. You invoke your right to an attorney, okay? At every point, if you have to keep, they're going to continue to ask questions.
And Mr. Riddick may have made my distinction that I'm about to make essentially without a difference because, as he said, police officers may find probable cause for anything. The stop and frisk only requires reasonable suspicion. So that's actually less than probable cause.
Yep.
I mean, my general viewpoint is I don't want a person who may become my client at any time talking to the police besides what they have to do, which is basically identify themselves. It's not necessarily a bad idea to understand, to at least ask the officer what the probable cause or what the reasonable suspicion was, because it makes them articulate something. And even if they articulate something that could potentially be bogus, that at least and you can convey it. And again, why I go back to, if you can, if your state permits it, try to record it. Most of the time, if you're in a public place, you can record things, but look at your state laws for that. But if they articulate a bogus reason, it can help in court because then they can't go back and change that, particularly if you get it on some kind of a record. If you don't, then they can always go back and kind of change what they did on the reports. And most police officers are they're not looking to go manipulate their reports and do things like that. But when you make them answer at the time, it kind of locks them into something. But again, be careful, because if there's no recording of this, they can change anything. They can get defensive.
Okay, Harold, I see that you have a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Well, it's kind of a question and kind of a statement. I've had my share of getting pulled over. The one thing I remember getting pulled over in Texas, and I'm from Louisiana, and I did everything they asked, sobriety test, and he was like, "Yeah, you passed the sobriety test." So he said he went to the car, and he come back with the little machine, and say, "Now all we need to do is blow in this tube here." I was like, "Look, sir, I'm not interested in blowing in the tube." And he was like, "Oh, it's not gonna matter. This one's not gonna matter. It's the one downtown that you gotta worry about." I said, "Well, I'm not interested in blowing in that one or the one downtown." So I'm like, "Well, take your license and have them revoked for 6 months. If you don't blow on this thing, in this to Louisiana and have them." I said, "Well, you do what you gotta do. I'm not blowing in that tube." And so he went back to the truck. He got mad or whatever. Then he came back. He gave me a warning and sent me on about my way, So I just refused to take it, and it was nothing he really could do about it. I mean, I did everything physically he told me. And this was years ago, but, I didn't really know the outcome then, but, that's the card I played. Look, I'm not going to let you bluff me. You know what I'm saying? We're going to do it however you got to do it. Because my thing is, I'm not going to give you evidence, even if I don't have any. I'm not going to make a case on myself when there is none. So that's how I kind of look at it every time they could run across me. And yes, sir, and I know, sir. That's all I give,
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah, you don't want to give them anything. Don't give them anything.
And just to add to that, attorneys and police are under different requirements here. Police have no duty to tell the truth. They can lie to you. They can tell you they have evidence against you. They can tell you someone else already turned on you. They are allowed to lie to you. They really aren't supposed to when they give your reasoning for probable cause for a stop or detention or reasonable suspicion. But pretty much any other time they can lie to you. Attorneys, we have ethical obligations that we cannot lie to you. So in your situation there, it sounds like the police officer tried to get you to do something, and he didn't tell you, he didn't lie to you about your rights there necessarily. I think if he said you need to do this, that's a little bit questionable, but they'll oftentimes try to convince you to do something or give consent.
Yes. Okay, Michael, go ahead and unmute yourself. You have a question?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so if I invoke my right to remain silent, and then I come back and I ask this officer a question, is that voiding my right to remain silent?
Pretty much. I mean, if you're going to, whenever you're going to engage in a dialogue, you are not being silent. So
right, exactly.
You're setting yourself up for more inquiry, and that inquiry, you may just go ahead and start answering, which could put you in a precarious position.
Yeah, and may I add to that a little bit? So invoking your right to remain silent is not actually done by words. It's done by being silent. So if you say I invoked my right to remain silent, that doesn't actually do anything. Now, when a police officer is talking to you and you're not answering, that's weird. So you're probably going to say something like, I invoke my right to remain silent. You don't have to. You can just sit there quietly. But anytime you speak, you have then waived that right to remain silent. So now a dialogue, a question is not going to be something that is self-incriminating, most likely because the way a question is. But yeah, anytime you say anything, it's not like if you invoke your right to remain silent and then you ask a question that's undone. The very act of speaking is what undoes it, which is why, especially once you're arrested, that right to counsel is so much stronger, because if you say, I'm not talking to you without a lawyer, they can't talk to you. If you go and ask them a question, what they have to say is, we can't talk to you unless you have a lawyer present. So, and that can get you in a little bit of an issue too, because then they can say, well, if you want to know the answer, you can waive your right to a lawyer. Never do.
You just muted yourself, Doug.
Wait until you have a lawyer present, even if it takes a little longer.
Yeah, definitely.
Gotcha.
One moment, Sean. All right. All right. Because there's more we're going to be getting to. Go ahead and unmute, Sean.
Going back to Mr. Jim's question about the concealed weapon permit. I am also a concealed weapon permit holder. I read the other day if due to COVID-19 that we have to social distance by wearing a mask over our face, that violates our concealed weapon permit. Can you talk to me about that?
That's that nobody knows, honestly, unless Doug, you know something, but every state is going to be different. And I haven't found any good answers to that yet. Hold on one moment. Go ahead over here, Amy. It sounds like you guys had something to say there.
I've seen a couple articles here recently, and I know one of them pertained to Florida, was that because of the pandemic, wearing a mask does not violate the concealed carry. That it's
Florida.
in the state of Florida, I'm still okay, which is good because I've been carrying and wearing a mask. So.
Okay.
So yeah, I would just check. You said you're in Louisiana, Sean?
No, I'm in Florida. I'm in Miami.
Florida. Okay. All right. Do you also have a question, Amy, before I'm going to kind of reiterate some things here. So go ahead.
So I have a question. I'm a teacher. And so as a teacher, you know, I'm held to like a higher moral standard than regular people. And so I'm at risk of losing my job if I am ever arrested, even if I didn't do anything wrong and I just get arrested and then the next day the charges are dropped, I could still lose my job just because I got arrested. Or at least temporarily lose my job and have to reapply and all that. Is there anything I can do to, from a legal standpoint, to keep myself from losing my job if I get arrested on bullcrap charges? I'm not the kind of person who's going to be doing anything illegal, so if I do get arrested, it's going to be bull. Is there anything I can do legally with my employer to say, hey, look, you're not allowed to fire me just for getting arrested because I didn't actually do anything?
Well, if it's in your contract, they can. If you signed a contract that says that, then they can.
Okay.
But doesn't mean you can't fight it, but it's going to be different for everybody in every state. And yeah, it's so.
Now, if it's not laid out in the contract, I mean, I know Florida is an at-will employer state, so they can technically fire me anytime for no reason at all. But I was just curious.
I mean, from my perspective here, if you've listened to what most of what we're talking about here, as that police officer said to me, and I think it was showed his perspective on how he deals with things, which I think is wrong. You can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. If you're not going to beat the ride, then at least beat the rap. If you can beat the rap, then you have a much stronger standing for why you shouldn't be fired. Most of Florida's a right to work state, which really means a right to be fired state. And so there's not necessarily much you can do. They can fire you for any lawful reason. Could you maybe make a reason that if you got arrested unlawfully, it wasn't a lawful reason to fire you? Maybe, but certainly it goes to much better negotiating power. And also, sometimes we try things in the court of public opinion. So if, let's say you got fired and because you got arrested on a bogus charge that was later then dismissed, which is kind of the key, because if it sticks, it doesn't look bogus, then the media gets involved. Well, now your employer looks bad. So the key, I think, would be more so focus on whether or not you're going to be convicted, which is really don't give the officer anything to work with. Don't give the police anything to work with, and listen to basically the message that we're telling you today.
Harold, go ahead. Harold,
Okay.
you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Is it a certain amount of time that they can hold you on the side of the road? Like I heard it may be 30 minutes. I'm not sure if it's a.
Every state is different. Like in California, they can hold you on the side of the road for 4 hours.
Okay.
They can detain you for 4 hours on the side of the road without having to arrest you. So that's, everybody needs to look that up for their own state.
Okay.
Okay.
A lot of times it's based on what they call the totality of the circumstances. So it's, and again, it's one of these things where you just need to keep asking, am I free to go? Am I under arrest? Am I free to leave? And then once you're free to leave, then leave. But the longer they hold you, obviously you can't leave if they told you you're not free to leave, because then now you have actually committed a crime. But the longer they hold you, because there are some cases on this, especially within interrogations and things that you could say after a long period of time could potentially be excluded, especially if they haven't given you reasonable accommodations like water, bathroom breaks, things like that. So typically speaking, I don't think anybody's going to be held on for 4 hours on the side of the road. If so, just
on the side of the road for 6 hours.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Wow. I have not seen a case come across like that. That's ridiculous.
That's a record.
When you're a white woman with a black man, they want to make sure you're okay.
Mm.
Yeah, but for 6 hours?
6 hours. Yeah. Yeah. They were trying to get him for human trafficking because there would be no way I would be willing to be in a vehicle crossing the state lines with a black man.
Wow.
Yeah.
I said, wow.
6
Well, I got
hours
another
in New
I got
Mexico.
another question. I got
Go
another
ahead.
question. What about getting pulled over in the dark? What can I do if I'm not comfortable with getting pulled over in the dark?
Okay, let me answer that. When you get pulled over, do me a favor, never stop in a dark area. You keep driving until you see a lit area.
Riddick, you're cutting out really
That's
bad.
what you should do. And who, me?
Yeah, you're cutting out. You're lagging.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm driving. I'm in a, so hold on. I'm gonna pause it and I'm gonna let you guys speak.
Okay. So yeah, definitely pull over in a lighted area. You know, turn your turn signal, wait till you get to a parking lot that's nice and lit. Avoid those dark areas for sure. Okay, I'm gonna kind of go over and touch on another thing as well. If you're pulled over and you're a passenger, you are not legally required to give an ID. If you are at a protest, don't take your ID. Okay, period. If you're walking down the street, you are not legally required to give identification. You're only required to have identification to operate a motor vehicle. Okay. If they are detaining you and they ask for your name, give your name. Don't give your birth date. Don't give an address. Even if you're arrested, don't do more than give your name and birth date. That's all you're legally required to give in most states is your name and your birth date. The lawyer said that, you know, he's been arrested so many times from protests, but they have no idea where he lives because he's never put that into the system, never given his social security number. He's never given his address, and he's never given any medical information. Know that you're also have the right to refuse to give any medical information, including whether you've had a TB test or not, if they are going to book and process you. So you're not required to give an ID unless you're driving a motor vehicle, all right? Be respectful, be polite, give your name if you ask for it, but don't offer up any other information. Go ahead, and I choose to not answer questions without a lawyer present.
Now, I don't know the answer to this, but I would speculate if you have a conceal and carry permit, you need to at least show that whatever identification there is for that. So if you're doing something that requires a license, you're going to have to show that license.
Yes, perfect. Yes, thank you for expanding on that. So I want to just reiterate, remember, nothing you say can help you. So basically, shut up, right? We're not going to answer any questions without a lawyer present. Consensual interactions you can walk away from. So, am I being detained? No. Walk away. They've just given you that permission to walk away. Go ahead and say, am I free to go? Yes. Yes, then walk away. If they say no, then obviously you're being detained. So you don't answer questions without a lawyer present. Do not consent to a search. Okay. Remember, any suspicion, reasonable suspicion, is pretty much any reason that they want to come up with that they can detain you or therefore arrest you. If it does get to the point where you're getting put in handcuffs, continuously repeat, I am not resisting. And we're going to have Riddick speak up on this one because all they have to say, whether you're resisting or not, is stop resisting arrest. That's how they make the charge stick. Riddick, would you please step in?
Sure, no problem. Okay, let me give you a scenario. We was chasing somebody in Marcy Projects, right? We caught him. He wasn't resisting. This is when I used to do a lot of wrong things. He wasn't resisting, but most of the cops got mad because that guy made them run and made the cops did work. Once they did that, they beat this guy down, and I'm not going to get into details with that, and they kept on saying stop resisting. And the other cops did not do that. So yeah, and long story short, those charges stuck. Every last charge we put on that person stuck. Was it right? Nah, but that's what they do. Most cops are not good. I'm telling you right now, they are not good. And the good ones is scared to speak up off of retaliation.
Yeah, we'll go deeper into that too once we're done with going over the right.
Yeah.
So, when you're being detained, you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to refuse a search. Do not show ID unless it is, of course, you're operating a vehicle or anything that you're doing at the time requires a license. When you're being detained, you cannot leave. Remember to do with your body what you are instructed to do by the police officer. So assert your rights. Every time you do not assert your rights, your silence, especially with the search, your silence is compliance. It's your consent. So continuously reiterate, I do not consent to this search. Get your fingers out of my pockets. Of course, these are really only going to protect you if somebody's recording or the body cam is working. Like here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, our police department does not have body cams. So you really want to make sure if somebody's around, have them record the interaction. We always want to try and record. And we're going to kind of talk about that too. So if you are recording an incident and how to protect yourself with recording an incident.
I actually have a question.
Yes.
And before we move into that, specifically for Mr. Riddick, because I don't know, I see this from the back end. If a person asserts their rights to a police officer, is that police officer less likely then to continue in perhaps what might be an unlawful search? Or do you think that affects what the police officer does or how they conduct themselves at that point?
Oh, say that last part again. I'm sorry.
So if a police officer's maybe one of these bad cops you were talking about, and they were going to do an unlawful search or something like that, and a person says, no, I do not consent or do not do this, if they say something assertively with asserting their rights, is a police officer going to perhaps take a second thought, or are they just going to continue with the unlawful search regardless?
They're going to continue with the unlawful search because due to the fact that they're already doing something illegal, they're going to take it all the way. Why go half-ass? Excuse me for saying it like that. Because they're going to continue doing with that. And what they do, depending on that individual, if that individual got a lot of like a lot of bad background, like did robberies in the past, who do you think going to believe? The judge. You already know how this works, Doug. Who are you going to believe, that cop or him? So it all depends on the individual. But yeah, they'll continue.
All right, so where was I here? All right, so when it comes to recording, so like in California, we can always film a police officer without consent, but if we're filming anybody else, we need consent. All right, so we are filming an incident happening, and I encourage anybody who has an opportunity, when we see our community being pulled over by police officers, if you have that time to stop and record, please do. I know plenty of my friends are very thankful when somebody stops and just watches the interaction of that police officer with our Black community. They feel a little bit safer, that somebody's there and somebody cares. So if you have that opportunity, do stop and film. Now, you have to comply if the officer tells you to step back from the situation or to step onto the sidewalk or whatever that might be. You comply with that, but what you want to do while you're recording is I am not interfering, because they can go ahead and trump up charges and say you're interfering with their investigation and arrest you. So you have to assert I am not interfering. I'm not interfering. Super important when we're recording interactions with police officers. Riddick?
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. About what you're saying about stop. I'm not interfering. That's crucial. You're right.
Doug, do you have anything on that one?
No, I have nothing to add on that.
Okay, all right. All right, let's see here. All right, so this is pretty much the basics of interacting with a police officer, whether they're being pulled over, walking down the street, just kind of out in community. Are there any other questions in regards to that? Anybody? All right. So Riddick, I would love for you to share a little bit more in depth. Let's start with what you shared the other night on that 72-hour wall.
That
one.
I don't know if any. Yeah, we have. Like I said, every state is different. New York's NYPD do things a little bit different than most people, obviously. But we have what they call a 72-hour the blue wall of silence. We don't say nothing for 72 hours. Within 72 hours, we getting our facts and our lies together to combat against the media and everybody else. That's what we do, and we are good at what we do, unfortunately. And that's why, that blue wall is something crazy, man. I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go into it.
Well, I want to go deep, but I mean, I think you can even take a look at media And if we don't have an instance where a community member is filming, look at how long it takes. Sometimes it takes years to get that body cam footage.
Yeah, because we editing, docking, we that's what they do, man. I hate to say we because I was a part of that, but yeah, that's what they do. They.
So before we actually go deeper, does anybody have a question, to an ex-police officer that they've always wanted to ask a cop?
Oh.
Okay, go ahead, Amy.
Okay, so as far as the searching and all of that, let's say, we have a teenage son who's now reached adulthood, technically, and he and his buddies, they'll have pot or something sometimes, although normally he's not the driver in these situations, or at least he tells me he's not the driver when there's pot in the car. If he is in the car with marijuana, and in Florida it is not legal to possess, does that change this at all? I know he told me at one point that they were not allowed to search anymore based on the smell of marijuana, that they had to see or suspect something, but I know that they can say they suspect something even if they really don't.
Normally when somebody's pulled over, they're investigating the driver. So, typically the passenger is not under investigation. Passengers should definitely not give identification. Teach your son to assert his rights.
But here's the kicker.
Exactly.
If that person is black, it's different.
Yeah.
It's very different. When a police officer approach a car and it's full of white people, our guards come down because we already know, okay, they probably from the suburbs, nothing not gonna bother us. Hold on, y'all can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're not gonna bother us. So okay, guys, don't worry about it, have a good one. But let it be a person of color in the same neighborhood. They're gonna have their hands on their weapons. I was guilty. And like you said something earlier about, we're gonna talk to the driver. No. We talking to everybody in that car. Everybody. And if nobody, just say your son is in a car, right? And they say, listen, that bag of weed, who does black bag of weed belong to? If nobody fess up to it, we locking up everybody. I don't care how small it is. We're gonna lock up everybody until one person say, okay, that's my weed, or whatever the case may be. Okay. So in that note, they could fish for anything. Oh, I smell marijuana. So guess what? Now they could go into your glove compartment. Even if you don't consent or not, they give them the right to go to your glove compartment. They could go into anything that's small enough to hold that bag of marijuana. That's what we do. We attack that. Oh, look what we just found. We found a weapon. We found brass knuckles. We'll look for anything to lock people up. That's what I mean. Anything, of course, with white people, but with the black people, it's quadruple.
Okay.
And that applies too if your son is in a vehicle with other black people.
Oh God, yeah.
Okay, because I have been on that other end, obviously.
Right. I have one more question. This is probably a Doug question.
No, it's not.
We do live in Florida, and so he's bipolar and he has bipolar medication. When he goes somewhere and he plans on staying the night, he doesn't always take like an overnight bag. He might put 1 or 2 of the pills in his wallet. I tell him not to do this, but he's hard-headed. And kind of, he's 18. What are you going to do? Anyway, so he's got them in his wallet. If he were to be arrested because he's got pills in his wallet, what happens when he gets to the process of jail? Are they going to allow him to prove those are legally prescribed, or is he screwed until trial?
Well, first of all, when I tell people, yeah, we're going to come after it, depending on your record. If he's a bad kid, yeah, we're gonna try to give him everything on. We'll try to throw the book at him. But he was a good kid, and he could prove that those medications with him, like with prescription, or he have the pill bottle with his name on it, with fix his ID. We won't. Most cops should leave that alone.
But if he doesn't have the bottle with him, then he's
you can tell us whatever it is, because Florida is big. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to reiterate too that the chances of him having an opportunity to prove that they are prescription because he is white is most likely going to.
That's so sad. So sad.
It is.
They're really not going to think a whole lot about it.
Okay.
But here, just to add on to that, like you said, you're in Florida, correct?
Mhm.
Florida is big on pills. So
Yeah.
most cops that pull them kids over, they know what kind of pills they are. They're not ecstasy, Xanax, or they know what it is. But just to fuck with them, they would do that. We can know it's for his bipolar, but she said, you know what? I'm bored. I want some overtime. Let's run him through the system. That's
Right.
what they will do.
Right. Okay.
Could after the fact you do a motion to dismiss and potentially win on something like that? Yes. However, the issue is that once you're under arrest, now the police have more opportunity to search. And so I'm not saying
Right.
this about your child necessarily, but just generally, as Mr. Riddick had pointed out, if you give them anything, they're going to take everything.
Got it.
So generally, it's a better idea to really document everything, have everything with you, and really go in there prepared, which is a weird thing to say when you're just living your life.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any more other questions? Because I love to answer question, guys. If you don't mind, I love it.
Anybody? Questions for our former police officer?
I've
And
got
don't
a
forget
question.
Doug. Yes, sir.
So you were explaining earlier that it does kind of depend on the demographics of whether you're going to inquire further or let somebody go, to put it politely, perhaps. What is the motive there? Is there a political motive on that these people are not going to be able to get an attorney and so the conviction rate's going to be higher? Is it a training? What, in your opinion, and you may not even really know, it might just be a
I know.
combination of things.
He
Go
knows.
ahead.
I know. It's not political. It's finance. It's all about overtime.
Mhm.
Most of these cops just do it. It's overtime. It's not political. It's not. Like you said before, with the demographics, in the black neighborhood, they're going to attack the blacks. In the white neighborhood, they leave them alone. So it's money. Overtime. That's all it is.
And that money continues. It doesn't just stop at the police force. That money continues into the prison system. You know, like anybody who's watched the 13th can really get a really good grasp on how all these crime bills were really to siphon the black community into the prison systems, and then we get to use them as slave labor. I'm sorry. I see you shaking your head, Riddick. You're muted again.
Yeah, I'm muted. No, I'm just shaking my head because I was just saying this have to end. This really have to end. Because, and like I said before, guys, I was victim as well by locking up people that I knew for a fact it was innocent. And it would, I just want to say, I got to say this. I can't speak for no other police department but the New York City Police Department. And we have higher ups that pressure us. The quota. You got to have a certain amount of numbers. Like you said before, the stop, question, and frisk. If we don't meet that quota, we get retaliation. We get down to the smallest post. We get down, okay, you can't move from here. And in order for you to elevate in the New York City in any police department, you got to do what we say. Don't do what we say. Just do it. That's it. And it sucks, and it have to end. They have to. That was all I needed to say.
Harold, go ahead and unmute yourself for your question, please.
Yes, I kind of have a question and a statement. I was pulled over one time. I was profiled, and reason why I say that is because I saw him when I passed by. I was coming from one town to another. I saw him, and then when I passed by another unit, and they followed me for about a half a mile, and then he drove with his headlights beaming. You know, and so it kind of messes with your vision as you go. I wasn't speeding or anything, but I was on my cell phone, so I know they saw my face from the light when I was putting it down or whatever. So they pulled me over, and I asked him, I said, well, what did you pull me over for? He said, you was driving too close to the line. I say, so are you going to give me a ticket for driving too close to the line? He said, well, I can't give you a ticket for that. I say, so why did you pull me over? And then he goes to asking me, well, do you have this in the car? Do you have that in the car? I was like, man, you never answered my question. You know, you can't pull me over. I mean, if you can't write a ticket, why you pull me over? So, long story short, they got into, I didn't know a little much about it, but they searched my vehicle and everything because they brought the dog out. They brought the dog out. You know, they do a little tap around the car and make the dog jump on the car. So, you know, he was like, okay, you know, can I search the car? And I said, I know I didn't have nothing in the car. I didn't have nothing. So I said, look, okay, I'm not allowed to search the car. I said, but I had to tell him, I said, man, if you put something in my car that wasn't in my car, we gonna have a problem out here. I said, I've been good. I ain't been bothered. I'm gonna let you go here. So he come back, you know, first he said, well, I ain't got nothing to do. I wouldn't put nothing in your car. I said, well, you searching it, so I don't know what you're gonna do. Like, you pulled me over for no reason. I don't know what you're gonna do. So he searched to come back and say, well, you know, we ain't find that and this, that, and other. But maybe you had some residue on the back window from you smoking. I said, man, I don't even smoke marijuana. What you saying? Because I look like this, you think I smoke? And he was like, well, the dog smelled of this, that, and other. So, you know, like I said, they kept me on the side of the road about an hour, you know. And after I talked about it, I know I shouldn't have let them search or whatever, but I'm coming from one city to another city. I'm not in my vicinity. And it's kind of hard when you know, when you feel danger, but you trying not to excite it. You know what I'm saying? You know, because he was all in my face trying to smell my breath and all this. And, you know, I'm like, what is all this for? You know, he was trying to just cop on something. And I just wanted to know, what do you do when somebody is just like adamant about trying to get a spark out of you? You know,
I'm gonna be honest with you. You did the right thing because first of all, you're black in a different neighborhood, and they're gonna look at you automatically because you're suspicious. If your hair was like that, they're gonna look at you like that. Yeah, what he was doing, he wanted you. He was provoking you. He wanted you to step out of your character to respond to him, so he could lock you up for that reason. That's what he was doing.
okay.
And I'll
You did
follow
it
up on that a little bit, if I may. And I will concede to Mr. Riddick's point here that you did the right thing, that you're black because you're black. And I can't speak to that personally. I can speak more about from a legal perspective, is that he had no probable cause to pull you over. There was no reason he made that stop, which is the reason he couldn't ticket you. This is one of the places where you'd say, am I free to go? Now, I imagine that Mr. Riddick here is going to tell me the cop probably would have said no anyway. But if he said you're free to go, at that point you could have driven on. What they likely did is held you long enough to get the police dog out there. And then when the police dog had a scent, it didn't matter if you consented to the search because now they had probable cause to search. And so at that point, there was nothing you could do. So I think they were probably stalling you to get the police dog out there to get that probable cause.
I didn't think about that. You're right.
And yeah, that is such a really good point. And if you kind of start asserting your rights as soon as possible to avoid those situations. I was in a very similar situation because I was with a black man driving across state lines, and they did the whole, I mean, like I said, they kept us there for 6 hours. They pulled out the dogs. They decided, they said they pulled us over because we were driving left of center. So I wasn't too close to the line, but I was left of center. And they actually took my vehicle. They took my vehicle. This is right inside of New Mexico, because I couldn't pay a $90 ticket for one of my headlights being out right there on the spot. Like they literally, and they made us wait until they took at a bottle of Golden Seal, and they took the Golden Seal and they sent it to get tested, and we had to wait for it to be the test results to come back before we were free to go. Crazy stuff. Yeah, Sean, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Nope, you're still muted, darling.
Yeah, I'm like you, Sean. I'll be the same thing. I'll be messing up on my
There you go.
Back to Mr. Harrell's scenario. The cop didn't have probable cause to stop him because he knew he had no narcotics in his vehicle. But he delayed. He held up the stop long enough for a K9 unit to come, and a K9 apparently made a hit. Is that legal? The cop never had. How did he know, other than a hunch, something that could have been something or not?
That's how racial profiling becomes reasonable suspicion. And all you need is that reasonable suspicion as an officer to pull somebody over. Correct, Riddick? Wait, you're muted, darling.
Yes, that is actually correct. You're right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I was under the impression that typically you needed probable cause to make a stop because you're seizing the car, you're detaining that car. Now, in practice, it may be different. I'll admit that.
Yeah, it is.
In practice, it's very different. Like what the Lawyers Guild said, basically, to take away from it, one moment, Canova, to take away from it is that the mentality is you probably did something. And that is their basis of probable cause. And they can literally use anything to create that probable cause, and will.
Let me add on to that. We stop questioning frisk. I forgot the terminology. I think y'all said I call it something else, y'all believe, because I know we know it as stop questioning frisk. And that give us, everything is about elevation. That's step one. Stop questioning frisk. Hey, listen, that guy looks suspicious. Okay, let's go talk to him. Hey, guy, where you been? We think you're doing drugs. Now I don't got drugs. You get permission to search. Most people don't know their rights. So we go through their pockets. We found drugs. Once we find that, now we're going to try to add more charges to it. That's what we give it to people like Doug. What can you do with this? We go to the I don't know if you're ADA. My bad, Doug. So
I'm not, but it's all right. There still people like me.
Okay. My bad. My apology, because I know we all like ADA's like, boy. But Canova, I'm sorry. You had something to say? You want to add on this?
Harold was first, and then Canova. So hold on, Canova. Harold, go ahead and finish up.
Okay. Everybody was saying that they was holding me up for the dogs to come, but he already had the dog in the unit. So like I was saying, the first car I passed by didn't move. The second vehicle I passed by was an SUV. And he was the one that pulled me over, so he already had the dog in the vehicle waiting to use it. It wasn't that they was holding me up for that reason. They was just trying to, like I say, the first thing he did was walk straight up to my face like he was trying to smell my breath. You know, I hadn't been drinking or anything. I was, driving. So it just turned out they profiled me from the first time they saw me,
Yeah, that first car was calling ahead to the second one. Hey, we got a suspicious black man through.
What it made me do was I never went that way again. I stayed on the interstate whenever it was a shorter, but slower, but shorter. I'd rather take the long, faster route, than to get pulled over like that. I just don't go that way no more,
That's so wrong. Canova, love, what's your question?
Okay, can you hear me, or am I correctly?
Good.
Okay, well, my question is, I want to recant an old story and get the officer's Riddick's opinion on it, because you said, like, if it's at night, you don't stop in an unlit place. Okay. Well, my question is, like, okay, there was this time I was in my 20s, riding through with a white friend of mine. She was driving, and it has historical connections with the Klan back where I live. So anyway, I've always been nervous about going through there, but she was like, no, it's fine. We're going to do this. And okay, so I went. My question is about distance. The sheriff's officer started trailing us on Highway 77, which is the main road through town. They had to, it was a good few miles to be behind us to turn onto this smaller road called 2321. And then about halfway down that road is when the lights went on. We knew they were back there. We just drove. She was driving. I was passenger. And I was all nervous, but she was like, it's cool. Just be calm. So anyway, we get pulled over. And that's probably like my most, invasive experience with law enforcement, because I was the passenger. So I just sat there. He pulls up, 2 officers, one in her door, one back here on the corner on my side, asked her for her license. She didn't have it. She left it at home or whatever, but she knew her license number. So she gave him the license number. And that's the first time ever I've been asked for my license as a passenger. And I was just kind of like, what do you need my license for? Or something or whatever. But I'm scared at this point. You know, I've heard stories, but nothing's ever happened to me. So I'm scared at this point. So I go ahead and give them my license. And then we're just sitting there. And I guess they run us or whatever. My license at the time had my address as Boynton Beach, Florida, because that's where I had just moved back home from. It wasn't Dade County. It wasn't Panama City. So anyway, they do the license check. They come back over. Her windshield is also cracked in front. And she has no license. She has a cracked windshield. I'm just sitting in this car. They come back. They ask her to step out of the car, to which she does. They take her around back, talk to her about something, don't know what. She comes back up, gets in the car, looks at me, and tells me, well, it's your turn. And I said, what do you mean? Like, I don't know, they want to talk to you. Okay. So then I had to get out of the car with these lovely two white officers just hanging out behind the car, stand there, and then ask me questions about various things. Again, I didn't know the things that I know now. But I got out, I stood there, still had my license, had not returned my property to me. And, you know, down to asking me if I was just passing through or whatever, because, you know, my address didn't say Panama City or whatever, sent me back to sit down in the passenger seat. She and I are waiting for another 10, 15 minutes. It was probably only a half-hour interaction, the whole thing. It just felt really long. So we're just sitting there. Oh, he did give me my license back after they were done talking to me at the back of the car. And then we sit down, and we both got tickets for not wearing seatbelts. And that was the end of our interaction. So, like, one, I don't need y'all to tell me that was all kinds of screwed up. But two, like, the whole, if it had been at night, this happened to be at like 10 o'clock in the morning, right? But if it had been at night, at what point am I evading? You know, because like we were on a main highway, and then we turned off on this 2301. If they turn the lights on at that intersection to turn on 2321, it's real dark there. You know, and then the direction we're going, we're just going further into the darkness, right? Because this is where the residentials are. So at what point, I wouldn't have been comfortable stopping regardless because it's not lit. But like, when does it become like I'm running from a police officer because they happen to hit me at a spot where it just goes dark? That's my question.
Mr. Riddick, it's whenever you feel like it, right?
I don't need Riddick, unmute.
My bad. I'm getting used to this Zoom thing. My bad. My apologies, guys.
Good, you good.
But I heard Doug, pretty much.
So, okay, but how far before it becomes evading to find a lit area?
Me, when I train a guy, I tell them at least 500 feet. No. If they driving, pull them over, and they keep on driving, I give them a half a mile. I usually give them a half a mile, quarter mile, half a mile. Now, if I see it, let's say if we driving and that person, you know, I say, you know, drive, get on the mic, tell them, hey, listen, pull over where it's nice and safe for you guys, but whatever. And if you see like an area to the left or the right and they keep going, now I'm going to get suspicious. So with that being said, I usually go with a half, usually a quarter mile or half a mile. I'll let them go that far.
Now, one thing I might also advise is if you are able to get cell phone service or something, you can also call in the police station, and they should probably keep a recording of that as well. But that way there can be communication. So you can say, look, I'm being pulled over. I want to pull over. I want to stop, but it's not in a lit location. I don't feel safe, so I'm looking for the best lit location. And they'll be able to kind of walk you through that a little bit, I would presume.
That actually
Yeah,
is
they
smart.
used to do that in California too. Okay, Antonio, you go ahead and unmute. There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so this goes back to Amy's scenario. If her son is in the car with some other people and one of them is able to film, as long as her son can assert his rights to, he doesn't consent to the search, they shouldn't be able to go into his wallet. Is that correct, Mr. Jackson? As long as he
go into the wallet.
As long as they don't have probable cause, they're not allowed to search anything. So that is correct. Now, most of the time police try to get consent. And a lot of the time people give them consent, and they don't ask it like a question. Would you consent to this search? You mind opening the trunk for us? We got to take a look. They say things like, we got to, we need to. And I think that's misrepresentation, but that's what tends to happen. And based on what I've heard today, and I know that I get, like I said, I get it from the back end. And for the record, I am defense side, so I'm not one of these ADA types. But it is a lot of what people say, but most of the time they don't actually assert their right. They don't say, I don't consent to search. They just say, no, I never gave consent. Then he just did it anyway. So that's typically what I hear. But to answer your question, without probable cause, no, he doesn't have to give anything up, and the officer has to give what probable cause that would be. For search, a lot of times, well, no, I'm going to leave it at that. I was going off base there.
So silence is consent. Period. When it comes to search, silence is consent. And so the thing, verbalizing that and continue to verbalize that is just going to protect you, because cops will continue to search anyway.
And see, the reason I brought that up is because when the police come behind, the whole with the lights on, that's to solicit a response, to throw you off your game so that you don't invoke your rights.
Everything that they do is to intimidate and get you nervous and get you scared. They are allowed to lie to you to try and get what they want. So all the tactics that they use are to get you to be complicit.
And something that we haven't really touched base on, but I think it's worth mentioning, is we've talked about reasonable suspicion to stop and frisk. They don't need anything to ask you questions. So they could just say, hey, what are you doing? Who are you? You don't have to answer them. Now, you don't have to stop. They can't stop you, but they can ask you whatever you want. And they can even use that as a method of escalation too.
Yeah, because one thing police officers hate is people that know their rights. Because we like to attack people, but if you don't know your rights, oh, we got you. Give them whatever they want, they're going to accept it. But if you know what you're saying and you know what you're doing, they don't like that. They despise that. So know what you guys are doing. Know your rights in your states. That's all I'm going to say on that part.
That is so true, because if you know your rights, it's a lot harder for any charges to stick. Okay, whether it be resisting arrest or doing an illegal search into your pocket because there's a pocket knife, but you didn't tell them that there was a pocket knife. Granted, though, when there's a Terry Pat, if there's a pocket knife and they ask you what it is, because it's a weapon, let them know. But if it's not a weapon, that's your only response. It's not a weapon. I don't consent to this search.
Okay, I'm not off topic, but I just want to say this for people that didn't know. When you get pulled over by the police, right? I don't know what route people do to to make the key thing. What I'm just trying to tell you, this is basically picture perfect. Cut the car off, take the key, roll all your windows down, take the key out the ignition, put it on top of the hood outside, and keep both your hands out the car. If you got other people in the vehicle with you, tell them to do that. Once you do that, they're letting the officers know, I have no weapons in here, and make sure you illuminate everything in your car. Turn the lights, turn on everything. That letting the officer know, listen, I'm compliant. I just want to give you guys that heads up. Just let them know you're compliant.
Okay, Michael.
Let me ask you a question about that, actually, because one of the things that from our defense side, we like to see documentation. So rarely do we get this, but I like video. So how do you take a video of what's going on if you're able to do that in your state with audio, as we discussed, and not present yourself as a threat where they might see that as a weapon or something? How do we strike that balance in a practical way?
How I would do it, get a car holder, a car mount, or whatever they call that, put that there and have it there and just let it record. That's what I would probably recommend to do that, seriously.
And this is the first time I've ever heard anybody recommend illuminating the inside of your vehicle. And I think that's an incredible idea. So you've got your phone mount up, your car lights on the inside are up. That's going to be a lot harder to say, oh, well, like Stephon Clark, that phone was a gun, kind of BS. Michael, you had a question?
Yeah, so if I go ahead and if I get pulled over and I plead the fifth, while I'm pleading the fifth and I don't want to say anything, but I don't want to consent to a search. So I basically should just say right out the back, I do not consent to a search and I am invoking my right of silence.
No, I wouldn't start off with your invoking your non-consent to search.
I
You're
would.
already like,
I mean, I would too.
I would.
you're
Because then I could just stay silent the whole time and you're not searching me at all.
Well, if they start doing a Terry Pat, though, you have to still continue to assert. Period. You can't just say it once. If they're Terry Patting you and they go in your pocket,
I gotcha.
This is again though why I say I think you strengthen your argument by saying I'm not answering any questions or consenting to any searches without counsel present. The
perfect way to put it.
courts are stricter about when you've requested attorneys. If you've requested an attorney, they're more likely to throw out any kind of evidence after that request than if you didn't. That's just and again, from a practical standpoint, that might not save you at the time. But in terms of trying to beat the conviction, that's going to do a lot more for you.
Gotcha. I like that.
Exactly. That was the perfect way to put that too, Doug. Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Okay, so if I lead off with that though, I get pulled over
And I'm sitting there and here comes the cop and I go, I'm not going to answer any questions and I'm not consenting to any searches. Aren't they going to just use that as probable cause to search me?
Not for you.
That's not legal probable
Well,
cause.
I know
That's
not, I mean,
probable
not
cause of a
me,
crime, not
but,
probable
like,
cause that you asserted a legal right.
Okay. I mean, they can, I mean, we're all seeing at this point, they can do whatever they want. And until it gets to court, you might just be sunk. But,
So here's kind of the difference, and I want to address it because this is not the elephant in the room. This is why we're here. Somebody like you and I, if we've got a carload of white people asserting our rights, those cops pretty much shut up and walk away.
yeah, they assume we know what they're up to and they leave us alone and we're not vulnerable like a black person is, unfortunately.
Exactly. They really get flustered when they see white people asserting their rights and they just kind of like throw their hands up in the air. Now, when we see Black, Indigenous, or Hispanic cultures asserting their rights, that's when you start seeing them get angry and in your face.
They see it as confrontational.
The only time I've had a cop get confrontational from asserting my rights is at a protest because those energies are already super intense. It's already a bomb waiting to explode, especially in Sacramento. Like, no matter what, they're always showing up in riot gear. Same with Oakland and LA. Like, so that's the only time I've ever had a police officer really get upset about me asserting my rights. But any other time, as a white woman, they throw up their hands, they're done. That's just the truth of it.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, I'm just going to add on what she said because, Doug? Anybody?
Yeah, what I was gonna say, what I was gonna say real quick is when the police pull whites over, it's about enforcement, and when they pull blacks over, it's about control.
Exactly. And making you criminals.
Yes.
Yeah. Riddick, what were you gonna say? And then we'll go to Sean. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Sean. I can't hear you.
You're still mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Two questions. One, do I have the right to request for a supervisor of a police officer at a traffic stop? And two, do I have a right to constantly film the whole interaction, even if the police officer tells me to put my cell phone down?
You have to first look at the rules of your state. That you have every right to ask for a supervisor. Don't say anything beyond that, you know. If it's fine in your state to legally record your interaction, you can just state that I have the right to record you, put it down and have the camera up if they are instructing you to put the camera down. if they're instructing you to put the camera down, this is obviously at a point where it's escalating into some sort of trying to restrain you, arrest you, do something to you.
I would be a little bit careful about asking for a supervisor necessarily, because what you've done then is elongated the process to where they can find more probable cause, walking around the car to figure out what they're doing. So I'm not saying it's not a good choice in some circumstances, but I would not do that as a general rule, because the longer you're there, the longer they can find things. In Florida, I haven't actually come across this, but our window tint laws, if you get aftermarket manufacturing tint, they have to put that in the door jamb, what that is. So basically, if a cop thinks that your windows are too dark, they can now ask you to open up your door, which gives them a bigger perspective to see what's in your car. So anything you're doing, any more contact with the police officer than necessary, you're giving them opportunity to find something for probable cause.
Okay.
You got to remember, like, a ticket creates revenue, an arrest creates revenue. It's revenue. So any access you give to that is revenue for them. It's no problem for them.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, well, before we close up, I just want to reiterate that in the Zoom call information was the National Lawyers Guild Know Your Rights pamphlet. You can also go to their website. They have a lot of great things where they can go further into detail if they're serving a warrant on your home. There's a little bit in this one on the Know Your Rights, but they have even more details in asserting your rights into protest situations, asserting your rights when you are getting served with a warrant. I highly recommend them too. If you don't have a phone number to write down on your arm if you're going to a protest, write down the National Lawyers Guild phone number on your arm, okay?
That was a good idea, though.
Oh, yeah. Like, if you're going to a protest, don't take your ID, okay? Go with at least one other person. Write down at least 1 or 2 phone numbers to call in case you are arrested and booked. Because and don't, just make sure your cell phone's charged and got that video recording, but keep those phone numbers on your arm. And if you don't have anybody, use the National Lawyers Guild because they will help you find a lawyer.
I don't want to hold everyone up, but I'd like to ask Mr. Riddick 2 more questions.
No,
one, in your opinion, how do we go about breaking the blue wall of silence? How do we go about, is there anything that we can do, not necessarily maybe us as individuals, but systemically, how do we go about breaking that?
We have to challenge the system. We have to challenge it. That's how you guys could break this. In law enforcement, we need to make it equal for everybody. And that's my personal opinion on that, because it's at the top. It's at the top of the mountain, and they need to trickle down so we can clear all of this up. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay. And you mentioned quotas. Would getting rid of quotas help?
Of course, it would help a lot, but they're not. Like Livia said, it's revenue. They're not going to get rid of the quota.
Before I get to the questions, would ending qualified immunity assist in this process?
I believe so. Yes.
Antonio, and then we'll get to Michael.
Yes. As far as the quotas, none of the police departments are going to legitimately admit to having quotas for revenue.
Nah.
So what it's going to take is going to take a citizens board and breaking the police union. At the top, the police union needs to be accountable. So if you put some citizen boards on there, that would be a start. Because the blue wall goes across all the states and all the police unions. And that is why defunding the police is the mantra right now, because they're trying to break the union, covering bad cops that's getting away with all this roughshod stuff.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's a good deposition question.
Very good, very good.
Case then is, do you have a quota? I would argue that'd be a relevancy question. So I guess that's something that we as attorneys can do more to expose that.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree.
also, I believe that legislation needs to change. We have to get laws changed to, for instance, one of our laws that in our state that just came about was the immunity laws for cops, which unfortunately Louisiana agreed to continue to give cops immunity for whatever. It's just ridiculous. But until legislation changes and you actually start penalizing or prosecuting cops for their actions, then you're only going to get a minimum response or a minimum solution to the problem, because they should be held to the same standards, if not even higher standards, than what citizens are.
I totally agree. And another thing also to add on to that, how we can sit up there and hurt cops. Let's hurt their pockets. If they do something dumb or something like that, take away their pension. I guarantee you, it will slow down a lot.
Yes.
Antonio, what did you want to say?
And it's not only about legislation, it's not about prosecution, it's about conviction. And when I say conviction of dirty cops and conviction of politicians sticking to morality and humanity, period.
Yeah. You know, like the Baton Rouge has formed a core community board that's supposed to work directly with the chief of police and the mayor. But there isn't a lot of transparency on what this board is actually supposed to do. What I would personally like to see this board do is the board should be the ones deciding if the action taken by the officer qualifies for immunity or not, in my opinion. The community should be the ones, not the police officers, discussing like if this instance was okay. Hold on, let's see, we had Harold first. Go ahead, Harold.
Okay, I think the board you're talking about, because I got an email the other day, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I had to go back and do a petition. They're actually trying to get one of these officers off the board. I don't know, it's not a citizen board. It must be the officers on the board, right?
It's one of the community boards. Yeah, we're trying to get him off of that community board. It's
Okay.
a different one than the mayor created.
Okay. Are you with Together Baton Rouge?
I'm following them.
Okay, see, I've been to meetings and stuff, so that's why I was saying with the emails. And I just don't understand what the board is for. I know it's like, I guess it's supposed to look or review certain cases.
All I can tell you about the board is they collect a good salary.
Okay, because I was trying to understand what it was myself.
I've been trying to find exactly what the board does or get a record of what actions they have taken. Mind you, I've only been in Baton Rouge for just over a year, but I haven't found anything.
Okay.
You know, but then I'm also finding like my district here in Baton Rouge, we didn't vote in our city board member or city council member here in my district. She inherited it from her husband who died 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
So I'm like, wait, what? Okay, Sean, let me go ahead and.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. It's not just one answer to correct police behavior. The main thing needs to be done that when these officers are finally fired from their department, they need to be decertified. Like in case of Tamir Rice, the officer didn't pass the psychological, went to another county in the state, became an officer, killed someone, and then got the opportunity to resign or even fired, but he kept his certification. If he keep that certification, he can go to the next county over and apply and still become a police officer. The other thing is to help us out that we must vote for the DA for local elections, because that DA is complicit in these officers by not prosecuting these officers. You know, so it's very important in local elections that we vet the DA. I know in my city we got Kathleen Fernandez, and she's up for re-election. And she's been there for like 26 years, and she has never prosecuted an officer, even if the evidence is right there in your face. You know, so hopefully this election coming up, she'll be removed from her office. So we must participate in local elections. You know.
Very important.
You know, like we just, there was a proposition here in Baton Rouge to continue the 16.5 million additional funds to the police department, and it actually passed. You know, they're getting an additional $16.5 million to their budget this next year. Baton Rouge passed that. There's been no prosecutions here in Louisiana. I've got so many cases in Sacramento, Vallejo, Oakland of officers who have definitely murdered more than one armed black man who just goes over to another county and gets hired and has done it again, and goes to another county and gets hired again and does it again.
I just want to say something on this about police officers. I know everybody will say there's bad cops, there's good cops, and I work with a lot of good cops. But a lot of good cops, even like myself at that time, we are afraid of retaliation from our peers. We're afraid that if we do the right thing, they're going to look at us as being a rat. They're going to look at us being, oh, you turning your back on the blue shield. So you may see your locker get thrown in the river. I've seen it done. You may get crappy polls. You may not even have backup when you're going to a certain response. So the cops is always afraid of retaliation. That's what we must dismantle as well in there once we have a civilian board, because they scared. They scared to say something. Most of them want to, but they're terrified. You know, I just wanted to just say that part, guys.
Because that fear goes even deeper than that. You and I have had conversations of just how bad that retaliation can get. You know, we're definitely in a system where damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yeah.
But the universal thing that will change the behavior is getting in those pockets.
Oh yeah.
And when that's go across all lines. If you get in the pockets where they get to pay for unjustified killings, then that will modify behavior.
Well, and you know why us as taxpayers haven't come together collectively, angry that our money is being used to pay out for these wrongful death civil suits. You know, we haven't gotten many murder convictions in the US, but we've definitely had a lot of civil suits won and large amounts of money being doled out to victims or their families. But it's us taxpayers who are footing that bill. And I do love that idea of them having to have a separate policy that they pay for, that takes care of that. You know what I mean? Like really hitting them in that pocketbook.
Like professional malpractice insurance.
Exactly. Yeah. And so if you've got a high rate of officers behaving badly, that's going to be a huge rate that you have to pay for on that policy. And that's a good way to start hitting them in that pocketbook. Anybody else have anything they want to talk about?
I have my second question now for Mr. Riddick that I promised you, because I've been held in suspense this whole time, and I know we're about to close, and I know I want to go eat dinner, and I apologize for holding everybody here, but you at the very beginning of this said you were coming from a BLM movement that was crazy. Yes. I haven't stopped thinking about that the whole time. What was crazy about it?
Yeah.
Okay. I met the young lady. Her name is Jessica. She in our group, and she put up she put up I think a flyer saying, hey, you know, we're going to be out in this park out in Queens. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna show my support. I'm gonna go in there. So when I got there, she's on point. She's definitely on point. Liv, she like you. Yo, that woman go hard, man. Oh my God. But the key thing is, it was a lot of cops there. I knew a few of them that was sergeant and lieutenants. So they looking at me like, Riddick, what are you doing here? I said, I'm on the other side of the fence now, guys. I mean, it is what it is. But I said, we here to try to keep the peace, because I didn't know that they was having a Blue Lives Matter protest in the same area. So I'm like, guys, I curse a lot. I apologize. I'm like, oh shit. this is about to get real. So what we did, we marched around. We were going to protest in front of the police station. So we marched around, stopped traffic. You hear people screaming. You hear the All Lives Matter people screaming at us, and people responding back to them. I say, guys, we don't respond like that. They want you to get mad so they can get upset so they can call the cops. Don't get mad. Just keep walking. Stick to the plan. So as we was walking, they said, the police department said, no, we cannot do it in front of there. That's not a problem. So we walk right back down to the park. It was like a good 45-minute hour walk. As soon as we turned that corner, it was nothing but Blue Lives Matter, and it clashed. I was like, wow. So I'm sitting up there, as you know, I just kick into old being a police officer. We're trying to keep the peace between this side and that side. So the cops understood where I was coming from. They know who I am, but they didn't know who everybody else was. So we had a couple of protesters on our side was barely instigating it, like pushing. It was going on both sides, but I said, guys, don't do that, because if you push the police is going to push back. We cannot sit up there and say we're fighting for the cause, and then all of a sudden we push, provoke, and then all of a sudden they retaliate back, and it's, oh my God, we can't be doing that. I did not sign up for this. So it just got a little crazy at the end. At the end, it was just too much for me. I had to leave because I have a lot to lose. I'm gonna fight the battle. Don't get me wrong. Like Antonio told me, yeah, sometimes you gotta be home, be that keyboard, but I'm gonna do it. But outside of that, we have to do better. That was the crazy part about it.
Cool. So how is everybody feeling about this session today? Was this useful? Was this good stuff? Definitely. Please feel free to send feedback.
Yeah, it was very good.
Appreciate you having me. It was very great being here and able to hopefully provide some input. I'm an attorney, so we talk a lot, so I apologize for keeping everyone late for dinner. But
We like the way you talk, Doug. You good, Doug.
Hey,
Yeah,
Mr. Jackson.
Feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer them.
Hey, Mr. Jackson, where do you practice law? What state?
Florida. I'm St. Petersburg, Florida.
Okay.
Wonderful.
All right,
Thank
I'm gonna go eat.
you so much. I really appreciate everybody
Thank
showing
you, guys.
up. If anybody ever wants to reach out to me with any ideas, questions, concerns, if you want to see what our group is about, those of you who are not in our group, you are welcome to come check us out as well. Thank you all for showing up. You know, spread the knowledge, download the packets from the National Lawyers Guild so you can get more details about a lot of other stuff. And have a blessed night.
Yeah, y'all guys are good. If anybody have any questions, please send me an email. I love answering questions. That's my strength. You know, so just hit me up with any questions. Just hit me up, guys. I'm available. Okay. All right, guys. I'm about to get out of here. Be safe. Yo, we all in this together, guys. We got this.
Yeah. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.
All right.
Yes.
When is the next one, Zoom meeting you have?
The next Zoom meeting we have is the end of the month. And it is the discussion on White Fragility book.
Okay. I had a good time with discussion, so I'll probably be on the next one as well.
So, and then next month, everything's still kind of in the works. Next month is the Willie Lynch Letters book. We're going to have a film discussion group. Antonio is going to have a discussion on Christianity and enslavement. And we will have a healing class, a narrative healing class as well, in regards to healing racial traumas as well.
Okay. Okay. I'll be on it.
All right.
Thank you for the invite, Antonio.
Yeah. Thank you all. Have a great night. Bye.